Regular meeting of March 20th, 2018 to order. We will now have the advocation by Councilman Donovan.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand and guide us in wisdom with the continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling?
Here.
Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Landig?
Here.
Mr. Marne?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Council, you have the minutes of the work session of March 6, 2018.
Move to approve. Second.
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And the minutes of the regular meeting of March 6, 2018.
Move to approve. Second.
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Tonight we have a presentation to be made for the police officer and the civilian of the year. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. I thank you for the time you've given us tonight to present our annual Civilian Employee of the Year and our Officer of the Year Award. I'd like to start off the evening with our Civilian of the Year Award. Karen Brooks, if you'd step up. She thinks all these people are here just for her. Erin joined the Mentor Police Department in April of 2012 and works as an administrative assistant to our 3 captains. In addition to her work for the captains this past year, she worked with Captain Gunch to renovate the Patrolman's Lounge. She used her talents to make a dramatic difference to update and modernize the lounge. The area was repainted, got new furniture, refrigerator, microwave, and a coffee machine. Karen has also brought police-related artwork to decorate the lounge, and the officers were very appreciative of her efforts. Karen is always helpful to her fellow employees. She performs many tasks that support the day-to-day functioning of the department, including the daily bulletins and the officer vacation books. Her friendliness is contagious, and she demonstrates professionalism, helpfulness, and true loyalty to the officers and to the Mentor Police Department. She's very deserving of this award, and I congratulate her. And for our police officer of the year goes to Officer Jim Collier this year. Jim? Collier joined the police department in December of 1988. During his tenure with the police department, his focus has been to put citizens of Mentor first and has contributed to our community in a variety of ways. Officer Collier has received many awards throughout his career. His most recent, other than this one, as he has been named a 2018 Crime Prevention Practitioner of the Year by the Ohio Crime Prevention Association, and he'll be receiving that award at the association's annual conference on April 16th in Dublin, Ohio. Congratulations also on that, Jim.
Thank you, Chief.
He has also received the Knights of Columbus Blue Coats Award, 2 Exceptional Service Awards, and 6 letters of commendation. He served on the SWAT team from 1995 to 2001 and in the Detective Bureau from 1996 through 2013, where he made an impact investigating high-profile cases such as burglary rings and crimes against children and the elderly. Detective Collier was also instrumental in bringing our evidence technician training program to the Mentor Police Department. In 2013, Detective Collier joined the Crime Prevention Unit. He quickly became a crime prevention specialist and a certified child safety seat technician. He is active with Greater Cleveland Safe Kids, Safe Communities Coalition, the Lake County Safe Communities, and the Lake County Crime Prevention Task Force. His duties in the Crime Prevention Unit are diverse and include programs such as the Police Department's Bicycle Safety Program, the Distracted Driver Program, Hero Day, mocktail events, the 3rd grade seatbelt program, and the National Night Out on Crime. Patrolman Collier has taken over and led the grant duties for our very successful retail theft grant program, which has flourished since its inception 4 years ago and is appreciated by local retailers and replicated by outside agencies because of the detail's impressive efforts. Patrolman Collier has been a dedicated and hardworking officer, and he's going to be leaving a large void here as he's planning on retiring at the end of this year. So congratulations, very deserving. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chief. And now call the public hearing for ordinance number 18-0-008 to order. This is being held pursuant to notice published and posted according to law. Julie, please read the title.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended and the zoning code map by rezoning of 19.0917 acres from R4 Single Family Residential District to RVG Village Green District at 7343, 7391, 9399, and 7411 Chillicothe Road, Plan A or Plan B.
Mr. Flipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Traub, please.
Thank you. Mr. Flipiak, members of council, this project in particular will require my use of the podium and our overhead capabilities to share with you the proposed rezoning before you this evening. Thank you. Members of council, this has occupied considerable discussion both before the Municipal Planning Commission as well as this body several weeks ago. And the first several paragraphs of the analysis before you provides a recap, as it were, as to what had initially been proposed. I'll just refresh council's memory with the plan that initially had been considered and the considerable discussion that centered on the issue of the interconnect of Remington within the proposed rezoning to the existing Remington Street. That is referred to as Proposal A. The bulk of my comments this evening will be on Proposal B, which was a plan that incorporates 2 points of access off of Chillicothe Road. This was recently reviewed and recommended by the Municipal Planning Commission, and again meets within the overall guidelines of the RVG district. Again, those requirements provide for a maximum of 2.5 units per acre, or 47 units could be provided for on this development site. And again, it falls within that requirement. Another important component is relative to the Village Green area. And this proposal, as you can see depicted on the drawing, shows a significant area, approximately 21%, to be set aside as open space, whereas the minimum requirement is 15. Per the conversation that we just had in the work session, I would note to the developer's credit as well as the Planning Commission the significant area of green space that's provided for. And while it's certainly not a common area for the enjoyment of all the residents, it certainly is a significant departure from what we've seen in terms of the quality of open space that's been provided in other subdivisions where there are less usable areas for common recreation, open space enjoyment, et cetera. As I mentioned, there are two proposed access points off of Chillicothe Road. The length of street proposed in this rezoning scheme is almost identical to what had been proposed under the prior plan, but none of the, or I should say, neither of the proposed cul-de-sacs exceed the 600-foot requirement that is a planning standard of the city. The administration had expressed concern with the Planning Commission and their deliberations as to our overall goal, and goal as stated in the zoning code would be to make an interconnect. That was again articulated in the staff report to Planning Commission. However, it was their recommendation to approve the plan that's before you now. We would note that traffic circulation around the cul-de-sacs is indicated as one-way traffic. The city engineer indicated his desire that in fact this be two-way. Another small design feature is relative to the pickup area of the mail for mail, and there's some further design considerations that we would recommend relative to that. But the idea of there being a separate pull-off area is a good one. It's just the execution that needs some detail. We would also note that, and council may remember from our prior discussion, that there is there are active gas tanks on the property. There is no access that's indicated to these gas tanks, and that needs to be paved and identified on the plan. And then finally screened from public view within the proposed development. As members of council may recall, this had been used as a nursery. We would encourage the developer to submit a tree management plan as a part of the preliminary, and we would hope that retention of existing trees could be incorporated in this development, or perhaps relocating the specimen trees to the open space area. I mentioned the fact that the neighborhood open space was suitable alignment here, in that it provided a number of the home sites with usable open space, and that there had been provision for, or certainly could be provision for benches, gazebo, et cetera, throughout this open space area. There are two areas that are indicated for stormwater detention. This is an existing pond that currently exists on the property, and a proposed basin towards the northern end of the development would be created and accommodate stormwater from the site. We would also note that there are some jurisdictional wetlands that surround some of these areas, and those too would need to be set aside. As with the previous rezoning that council had considered, there are restrictive covenants that have been proposed for the Menor Heights subdivision. These include such items as minimum floor area for 1.5 story, and 2-story buildings, concrete surface for the driveways, the fact that building foundations would have a brick, stone, or stone-like material incorporated within them, and several other parameters that hopefully will lead to a quality development. I would conclude that the Restrictive covenants also address such areas as accessory structures, satellite dishes, which we don't see very much anymore, and also keeping of animals. We would note that the proposed restrictive covenants also identify responsibility of all of the green space to be that of the association. And again, members of council are well aware of the problems that have occasionally surfaced relative to the treatment of these open space areas. I would just conclude my comments with, again, emphasizing the administration's desire to effect an interconnect between the two street segments. But again, Planning Commission did, in fact, recommend approval of this proposed plan that's before you this evening, if there are any questions. Hearing none, I'll
questions?
sit down. Thank
Okay,
you.
very well. Are there any comments from the applicant?
Hello, thank you, members of council. First of all, I want to thank you for accommodating me at the last time I was before you and letting us go back and work with Planning Commission to work through that Plan B, so often been called. I think this whole process could end up being a very good example of how we can, as council and city and as developer, listen to the will of the people, so to speak, and try to affect a development that is accommodating to the neighboring developments. So it's been a very interesting process. I first of all wanted to thank all the residents of Winchester Woods for their input, and I'm really excited about the new plan. I feel like it's still good for me, but more importantly, I feel like I've accommodated the will of our neighbors. And I know Fred Zook, a longtime business owner and resident of Menor, is very pleased with this plan. So I'm here to answer any questions you guys may have. If I could ask one favor, my engineer has to go to a meeting in Willoughby at 8 o'clock, so if there's any engineering type specific questions, if we could maybe accommodate him and address those first, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes, I have one. In looking over the development, obviously, we've had a number of choices to choose from over time, and this particular one that has the two access points out on the Chillicothe basically eliminates the need for a connection to Remington. However, it occurred to me that it might be a good idea to provide an easement from Paperback Drive to Remington for the purposes of installing a multi-purpose path, which would offer folks on both sides access for bicycling or walking. You have a bike lane already installed on Chillicothe, and suffice to say, there wouldn't be any car traffic or other motorized vehicle traffic. It would be for the purpose of public access on foot or on bike.
You ever run it to the common area?
Sure, either way.
Yeah, I believe we could accommodate that. If you look at the plan, the back of lot, oops, let me get this back. The back of lot 21, we could come along the back of lot 21 and then intersect the path with our existing walking trails, which I'd be happy to do that if it pleasures council.
It's something that's been done quite often. I think I mentioned a couple of Carmen Place up by Kmart and a couple other places where Veterans Park has them as well. A number of them that cut through, and we don't ever receive any complaints about them. Some of the kids riding bikes on Remington side can ride up to the bike lanes on, and vice versa.
Yeah, I have no objection to that.
I think it might require some cooperation on the other side, possibly with the folks at, and I see some representatives here from the homeowners association that might offer some comments when the time comes to it as far as connection goes.
Yeah, I was going to say that the only things that come to mind is, and this is going to sound foolish that I don't know this, but I'm not sure if they have cul-de-sacs on Remington or sidewalks on Remington.
Well, you wouldn't even need a sidewalk. I mean,
Just connect to
so
the road.
You just gotta, if you look at what's been done in the past, I mean, it'd be nice to have sidewalks, so don't get me wrong, but still in all, you can do that without a sidewalk.
Then I think the only thing that I believe we would have to, because that was a temporary cul-de-sac on Remington, I believe one of those two residents on the end lots would probably have to also grant the easement so that we could connect to the road. But as long as that can be worked out, we have no problem doing that.
Yeah, because it beats the alternative.
People are going to sneak through there anyways, probably, right?
Yeah, but no cars.
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Donovan?
One of my big concerns was the cul-de-sac, the existing temporary cul-de-sac. Everybody kept calling it a temporary cul-de-sac, and I was concerned that a temporary cul-de-sac wasn't constructed like a cul-de-sac that's going to be permanent, because you're going to tear it out later and continue the connection to the new neighborhood. And I want to thank the engineers for going out and looking into that for me today. And maybe Dave can explain to us why that cul-de-sac is good. It's solid and it's permanent. So we don't, and that, we just had a concern that was going to get put on the city or the residents or someone like that to tear it out and fix it and pour new concrete. But Mr. Swigger has some information for us if.
Let's see if he can
Sure. We took a look at the cul-de-sac on Remington, and I know that it's been talked about as being temporary, but as far as the construction or the design of the cul-de-sac, it was very typical of a cul-de-sac built in the 80s, and I would those requirements were in place up until more recent times, probably into the 2000s. But the diameter of the cul-de-sac is 80 feet. It is full-depth concrete. It appears to be built very similar to the rest of the roadway. I do have a few photographs if anybody's interested in seeing them. The only thing you could tell if you by looking at this cul-de-sac that it's a little different would be the jointing of the concrete, where the joints were in place so that it would be easily dismantled for future extension. So the north half or the north wing or south wing of the cul-de-sac could be removed where the joints are, and the way there's a crown built into the center of the road. So it was pretty clear that there was some thought put into the construction of the cul-de-sac to make it simple to extend. But it drains, seems to be draining adequately, and seems to be built very similar to any permanent cul-de-sac that was built in the 80s. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the applicant? In that case, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this item? Sir, to the podium, state your name and address.
Members of council, my name is Saji Arumpanel. I live on 7355 Demshar Drive, corner of Demshar and Remington. I'm also the president of the Homeowners Association. We have a good contingent of our homeowners here to represent. And just one more time, if everyone could please stand up to show our unity in this matter. And I believe last time we were in front of you, we kind of gave the detailed speech of what we were in favor of, but today I'm here to speak in favor of the design. We've been to the 2 planning commission meetings, we've been to the council meeting before, and we're still resolved in how we want this community not to connect to the new community. We're very happy with what's transpired, with the meetings and the collaboration with council, with the planning commission, with the designer, and administration to come up with the plan that's before you. So as you've heard, our main concern is with the connectivity is safety. We just feel the cost of saving seconds or minutes in a once-in-a-million situation by providing that access is outweighed by the increase through traffic that could affect our community. Won't go into the details of all of that because you've heard it, I believe. So if it does come up and you need to hear it again, I'll be happy to come back up and share. Otherwise, we do want to thank Mr. Davis, the owner of the property, Fred Zuch, for working with us and taking our concerns into consideration as they're developing their new development. And again, just to reiterate some of the earlier points about the Planning Commission meeting and the concerns raised and how the Planning Commission did vote to approve the plan without connectivity. And again, just a reminder, we do have a couple petitions that were presented. One from our community stating that we did not want a connection, and the other stating that we are happy with the current access, emergency access that we've enjoyed for the last 30 years in that community, and which was signed unanimously by our residents. So again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk and collaborate with everybody. Like Mr. Davis said, I think this was a good experience for everybody in terms of how current residents could work together with the council, with new development coming on board, and making sure everyone seems satisfied with the result, and in the end makes Menor even better place to live. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening, Council and Administration. My name is Timothy O'Donnell. I reside at 9606 Musket Drive with my wife and 3 children. I'm a career fire lieutenant with 20-plus years experience in the fire service. I'm a proud member of the Winchester Woods Homeowners Association, and I am here tonight in full support of Plan B and in opposition of Plan A. Plan B calls for 2 ingress and egress points onto Chillicothe Road. We are in full support of this design, which satisfies all City of Menor codified ordinances, including all the sightline codes set forth by the city. This design meets the needs of all the parties involved and allows our neighborhood to remain safe, quiet, and secluded as it has been for the 3 past decades. There have been several areas throughout the city where the Homeowners Association has worked with the city to find an equitable and workable solution. And that is what we are here to ask for tonight, to approve Plan B. Approving Plan B tonight and opposing Plan A is a logical and safe solution for all parties involved. We have met and collaborated with Councilman Blake, with Mr. Davis, and several city leaders in an effort to find an amicable solution where everybody's needs are met. We have remained polite, professional, and courteous throughout this process, and thank everyone who took the time out to meet with us to assure our neighborhood and community remain safe. Our opposition of Plan A has been and remains the increased dangers that a public through street would create to our community. Dempshire Drive has no sidewalks, is narrow, has poor drainage, and has a skewed 55-degree intersection where it meets Route 84. Dempshire Drive resident and civil engineer Mr. John Zabel has sent a couple emails to council highlighting the major deficiencies of Dempshire Drive and how it is ill-equipped to handle an increased traffic load with which a public street would create. In closing, Plan B meets all City of Menor codified ordinances, was overwhelmingly approved 6-1 by the Planning Commission, and will not increase traffic in either the Menor Heights or the Winchester Woods developments. Approving Plan B tonight is a win-win for the city and the residents. Please reaffirm the Planning Commission's vote and vote Plan B tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor?
They came to the planning commission.
Take it they were against? They were against?
They just wanted to make sure there's still that mitigation.
Good evening. My name is Jim Stone. I've been a Menor resident for 40 years. and we've lived at 9595 Musket Drive for 30 years. We raised our 4 children there. And we chose this neighborhood because of the safety and security provided by the limited access and lack of traffic. When we purchased our home, the developer did not tell us that the cul-de-sacs were temporary. Now, we do know that there's always more problems and lots of speeders on cut-through streets. Mentor has at least 90 residential streets longer than 600 feet with only one entrance, just like our neighborhood. And we've provided you with a highlighted city map showing these neighborhoods. To leave the 89 other neighborhoods intact while opening ours up and decreasing our safety and security, that's just not right. I mentioned the last time I spoke here how it is obviously not imperative to connect any of these 89 other neighborhoods to create a second entrance because you're not using eminent domain to do that. The petitions that were mentioned earlier against this cut-through that we gave you were signed by 124 adults, representing 66 of the 70 homes in our neighborhood. But more importantly, they were signed by 100% of the people we were able to speak to. Not included were the 52 kids under 18 who will be at risk if this cut-through is approved. We also know from your past practice that the city has listened to the citizens of 4 other neighborhoods in similar circumstances, and representative democracy worked as it should. We are here tonight to ask you to not single out our neighborhood and to not decrease our safety and security and increase the risk to our children. I think it's very important to note that the Planning Commission has looked at these 2 different development plans 3 times. All 3 times they voted overwhelmingly 6-1 to not make Remington connect through over to Chillicothe. As I understand it, you're here tonight to consider 2 development plans, Plan A and Plan B. With the original Plan A, you have lots of options to consider. 1, you could make a full connection to Remington Drive. 2, you could make no connection at all to Remington Drive. 3, you could make an emergency connection with an easement. Or 4, you can make an emergency connection with a gate. The Planning Commission last voted on Plan A with a full connection to Remington Drive. The vote was 6-1 against this plan. With Plan B, which meets all local and state codes and has 2 entrances on Chillicothe Road and which has no connection at all to Remington Drive, the Planning Commission voted 6-1 for this plan with no connection. I have no doubt that if Plan B had been brought before council first, you would have accepted it, and there never would have been a Plan A. So tonight you could spend a lot of time deliberating and debating these plans and these options, but my suggestion is for one of you to make a motion to vote on Plan B first.
You want to wrap it up, Mr. Stone?
Yeah. Okay. By voting on Plan B first, if it passes and Plan A is moot and needs no further discussion, Mentor Council shows its citizens once again that it does listen to them and that representative democracy is alive and well in our great city of cul-de-sacs and kids. Thank you very much for your time.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this item? Sir, come to the microphone. Yes, yes. Sir, state your name and address.
My name's Ron Call. I live at 12355 Girdled Road, Concord Township, but I own properties on Chillicothe Road. And these are diagonally across from that development. And mainly, I didn't get a plot plan or anything about Plan A or Plan B. Do you have one?
I think we do, don't we?
Yeah, they're in the clerk's office.
I'd like to know where the road's coming out at, because I own property across from that.
You got a copy there.
Another question, too. Are they going to widen Chillicothe Road in that area? Because if you've been down Chillicothe Road, the traffic there is awful.
At this time, there is no plan to do any work on Chillicothe.
This is the one we're going with, right?
They're both before council. We're hoping council will approve Plan B, which would be this one.
That's where my lot is, right there.
And I've talked to Mr. Marks, and I have to provide headlight mitigation for any, direct
Yeah,
lighting.
That's one of my questions.
Yep.
Are they going to widen the road there?
Wait a second. Guys, I'm sorry. This is something, we can have you do what you're in opposition for, but we've already had the thing as far as the applicant. So what's your opposition, sir?
My opposition is if you widen the road.
We're not widening the road. There's no plans at this time to widen Chillicothe Road.
Okay. Well, that was my only opposition.
All right.
Through.
Yeah, thank you.
Plus, I got a mock map, too.
Easiest part.
Is there anybody else who wish to speak in opposition to this item? Should have, the applicant. No. Hearing none, the council is in receipt of all correspondence and emails received pertaining to this matter. This public hearing is adjourned. Council, we need a motion to remove the legislation from the table.
So moved.
Okay, hold on.
You gonna read it?
Read it first.
Okay, sorry, Julie, go ahead, read.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended and the official zoning map by rezoning of 19.0917 acres from R4 Single Family Residential District to RVG Village Green District at 7343, 7391, 7399, and 7411 Chillicothe Road.
Move to remove from the table?
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Filipiak.
Don't know that we have anything to add, Mr. President. I would point out something that we've just kind of been discussing here with respect to Plan B. In the event that council is disposed toward that, there is a practical issue that would have to be addressed with respect to the right-of-way. The current cul-de-sac, while it would meet reasonable engineering standards, the outer edges of the circular area are within a temporary easement. So without dedication, the city would have no ability to maintain that going forward under a temporary easement. So that would have to become, obviously, we'd either want a permanent easement there or more preferably right-of-way dedication within the limits of that cul-de-sac.
That can be done administratively, can it?
Not sure how Mr. Hennig would want to proceed on that.
Well, I guess what I don't see is how, this plan is going to do that. Okay, I mean, this is a different piece of property, right? So.
Right, I
yeah,
agree.
Now, we may have the homeowners here, and the president of the association, maybe they might want to speak to that now if that's something that they're agreeable to do, but, it's a different property. And I would think that they would want that to happen.
I would think so, too.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't know how we're going to do that and put that onto this item of legislation.
I don't know that you can either. I'm just pointing that out. It's not contemplated because, again, the original plat for Winchester Woods.
It dovetails, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It dovetails, though, into the comment by Councilman Kirchner relative to,
Right.
Any kind of multi-purpose trail that might exist between the two because, right now, we're not sure of how that would happen because of how this plat, is. And that's a detail that could be or might not be worked out. It all depends on the willingness of, the neighborhood there. But they need something from us and as far as that cul-de-sac and we'd like to, I guess, work with them on that, right?
Mr. Marne.
Wouldn't you just have one homeowners association take care to their end and the other homeowners association take care to their end? Otherwise,
You
it's
know,
30 years now and we have
I
send
need to
a
look at the
couple kids
plat.
over with a lawnmower.
I need to look
back
at
of
the
a truck and they
I
take
need
two
to look at
swipes
the
and they're
plat.
done.
Yeah, my answer is I'd need to look at the plat, okay, and see what it exactly says. Because
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me right now, and so I don't want to wing it.
I get it, okay.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Can we just make that a preliminary stipulation?
Well, it's not a this piece of property is not inside the property that is subject to this rezoning. It's the adjacent subdivision.
Right.
So, they own that property, and Mr. Davis or Mr. Zutch owns the other property. And we're dealing with the applicant and that proposal, not the.
Couldn't the city of Mentor still have an easement at the end of the road / cul-de-sac because it was planned?
Well, it might,
platted
but
this way
we just
30
don't
years
have
ago,
that
or whatever?
detail in front of us right now to work that out. Plus, I'm sure they would want to have an opportunity to look at that final arrangement, because as you say, it might, mean the investment of some money. I mean, typically, when a subdivision road like this is put in, it's put in by the developer. City doesn't pay for that. The developer pays for it and makes all those improvements, and then we accept that street through a dedication. And so this is a little unusual in the sense that, there's a detail here to work out, but it's not unreasonable for the city to expect the homeowners association to participate in whatever the cost is going to be to take care of the end of that cul-de-sac. Because I'm sure everybody wants to have the snow truck going up and down that street and being able to turn around and do all that kind of stuff. So, it's just a detail that needs a different day from my
As long as
perspective.
it's not a loose end, I guess is what I'm saying. So
Well,
we don't wanna wear
I think everyone's paying a lot of attention to it, and
Mr. President? Mr. President?
Yes.
And that was my concern before. Who's going to get stuck with repairing this, bringing this cul-de-sac to where it should be? And can we proceed with this without finding out, where we're going to go with this cul-de-sac? Like we said, if it was a connection, the builder would be taking care of this cul-de-sac. He would be cutting through and removing the ends.
but what are we asking them, though? That's, we don't have a detail yet.
I know it's two separate properties, but it's a
We
situation.
would not, in answer to your question, we would not hold up this rezoning
Okay.
on that point.
Okay.
Because it's a different street, it's a different subdivision, it's a different property.
Okay.
And they have an interest in working with us to, iron this detail out.
Thank you.
They've got skin in the game, but the problem is no one knows for sure exactly how much it might cost and, what we want to do there. I thought I heard even a comment that cul-de-sac was a little, it wasn't up to our current standards. Might want to be a little bit bigger. Not much, but it's something that we would, put to a different day.
Real quick, Mr. President, from my understanding, the cul-de-sacs now in our code are 140, Dave? 140? and then
the right-of-way
This one
is?
is, yes, this
The-
one's 100 feet, correct?
The current diameter requirement on a cul-de-sac for pavement is 100 feet. It
Okay.
used to be 80 when this development went in, and the right-of-way requirement was 120 feet in diameter around the cul-de-sac, and it's currently 140. So everything got larger on cul-de-sac requirements. But in this case, there's a 60-foot right-of-way that runs all the way to the property line with these sort of half-circle easements platted on either side, the north and south side of the cul-de-sacs, to accommodate the circular aspect and the sidewalks. And it's currently listed as a temporary cul-de-sac that was to be, or a temporary easement that was to be abandoned when the roadway was extended, or dedicated for
Mr. President?
extension.
Yes.
If there's one thing I know from working with the engineer's office, they like to study something a little bit. Take a little time, study it. It's just not something that you do on the fly. and expect good results. You know, we're talking about a permanent street that's going to have, you know, trucks on it and vehicles, and it needs to be done right. And there has to be agreement from the property owners on either side. You know, you know, that right-of-way comes to an end, and you just can't go, you know, further than what the right-of-way permits. So it needs to be studied, needs to have a discussion. I just don't see it happening here
Okay.
tonight.
All right.
Mr.
John,
President?
Mr. Kirchner?
Yeah, can I offer the amendment now?
Oh, hold on. Mr. Marne?
Going back to the cul-de-sac. So, in past meetings, first of all, I should have never named it Plan B. I hate that we should have called it something different, at least something cooler. That's my first thing. Plan B, this sucks. But anyway, in terms of, you know, we already know based on our current code that, you know, it should be a cut-through street, and we have made exceptions in the past. In terms of in making that current cul-de-sac in Remington, I mean, we've made it wider because fire equipment, fire engines, everything has gotten bigger, as we know, and it costs more. So how do we go about making sure that we're already breaking our codes once if we go ahead with Plan B? And number two is making sure that this is adequate so that we can get our fire equipment down there and they can turn around in case of emergency. So how do we lay that out?
Mr. President?
Mr. Flipiak?
Well, again, with respect to Mr. Hennig's comment, my intention was not to remedy this evening. It's simply to point out the fact that I'm guessing that the people in Winchester Woods who live in those two properties don't want to maintain that concrete on their own. With respect to the right-of-way issue that you brought up, Mr. Marne, with the pathway that Mr. Kirchner recommended, there actually is right-of-way there. So we have the right-of-way that if it falls within that area, we can utilize that, and we don't need an easement for the pathway, at least out to get out of Winchester Woods. But I think, you know, correctly, we'll have to study that to see. I mean, obviously we're dealing with a lot of cul-de-sacs in the city that are pre-2000s construction, and so we don't we manage those. I mean, I'm sure that Chief Searles would tell you that he'd like to see them a little bigger, but you know, my guess is that if we're satisfied that it's manageable as it has been for the last 30 years, that it will continue to be, and we'll simply want to acquire a right-of-way there so that the city can continue to maintain the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll want to look at the radii around it, because again, I'm assuming it was built under the same standard for cul-de-sacs in place at that time. That would be what we would want to achieve at a minimum.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President?
Counsel, Mr. Sean Blake.
Thank you. I think if we're ready to move forward, I'd like to make the motion to amend this ordinance to include Plan B and send that to council for a vote.
Are you doing anything?
Yeah.
You done that?
Hold on, Sean. Because we got some amendments on that. We had some amendments on there that,
All right.
so let Mr. Kirchner read that off as far as the,
Right, the part of the amendment would be to add, so everyone knows, today, we put together what we call an as amended, all right, which is what we had before is all in black, and then we've added new language in red that lays out how it got to this place, that it came up to council on a public hearing, it was referred back to Planning Commission, they looked at two plans, they made a recommendation, they changed their mind on the initial, all that's laid out in here, as are the 7 conditions put in by the Planning Commission when it approved Plan B.
same 7.
Right. Did I say something wrong?
No.
Okay. So we've included those exact conditions and left the number 8 blank for the chance that somebody may have decided during the meeting to add something. And so at this point in time, if there's something to be added, it needs to be added now.
Mr. President,
Mr. Kirchner.
I would like to add an eighth amendment or stipulation, an amendment condition, and that would be that the developer will provide for and install a multi-purpose path within the easement from Menor Heights Development to Remington Drive. That's a motion.
That's a motion. Do I hear a
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Before we do that, what?
To Plan
Mis-
B.
Mr. Davis, are you in agreement with that?
I'm happy to accommodate council and provide that. And I did look, and as Engineer Swigert confirmed, the right-of-way does go to the property line, so I don't need any easements off the.
Right, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and so you agree with this amendment? Presuming everything works out. Okay, I just wanted to
No,
get
that's
that,
okay,
get
that's
that on the
okay.
And to
record.
be clear, that was in the amendment to Plan B.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
I would move to suspend Plan B as amended
Well,
with the,
Conditions?
well, I think we need to, we've just added the eighth condition. Now we move to amend 008 to incorporate all the red language font that puts this into the Plan B.
so moved.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan? Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
To
Yes.
suspend as amended.
Mr. Marne?
Yes, as amended.
And Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to suspend as amended.
Wait, so now we're officially under Plan B?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
We're under Plan B with the 7 conditions of the Planning Commission plus an eighth added by Councilman Kirchner.
Okay. So
Oh, sorry,
I
Scott.
was going to ask
I'm
questions.
sorry.
Ask question. Okay. Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Marne.
Mr. Flippia, question.
Yes.
All right, now we have 2 outlets on the Chillicothe Road, with the one outlet being right at the bend. The bend on Demshire was approximately 55 degrees. What's the bend on Chillicothe? And is that a future problem? Could that be a future problem? And if it is a future problem, what do we do to correct it?
You wanna address it? We reviewed the site distance, basically was our, it seemed to be the biggest concern when access points to Chillicothe were being discussed. And we've determined that there will be no site distance issues. So minus site distance issues, we don't see any other issues that the access points would create.
Okay. And was there a study done on what, in terms of which drive that people will use more, one than or the other? Or is it split pretty much 50-50 from what our best guess is? Because my main concern is just that corner. And we've already had a problem with Whalers Cove, which we went ahead and spent a lot of money to fix the problem in terms of sight distance. So I just don't want to have another problem here about a half a mile down the road in terms of safety.
I think without the site distance concern, there are no safety issues at the intersections with Chillicothe. The distribution would be split pretty evenly.
Was that angle pretty much the same as the angle in Demshire in 84? Stated earlier about 55 degrees, give or take.
I just have to review the plan. I don't recall there being a severe angle issue with the connection to Chillicothe Road.
But I just don't want to make the same mistake twice, and it was an expensive fix.
I'm still trying to get to my site plan.
Beautiful light, though. Looks great. Post, but expensive. See what I mean? Because I parked over on Reedhurst when this first came about, and I walked over, And, you know, that's a pretty good turn, especially if you're heading south.
The intersections are basically 90-degree approaches to Chillicothe, so they aren't skewed.
They're not skewed.
No.
So I could have been standing in the wrong spot eyeballing it.
Might look like that from where you were.
The map or where I
But
was.
the-
I
mean,
literally had it in my hand, so.
Yeah, obviously, the roadway on Chillicothe has an alignment change with a curve, but the intersections are basically 90-degree coming
Okay,
off of.
cool. All right, thank you.
Okay,
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Donovan.
Just so that people are clear, the site distance is that a 35 mile an hour, 25?
35.
And the distance on 35 miles an hour to see that curve is what again, 1,000 feet, or, I don't know the number.
The
just-
intersection site distance, I'd have to refer to the manual, but.
Yeah, okay, as long as it was checked and.
Yeah, we did check it, and if I was guessing, it was 250 feet, in that range.
Thank
Had a
you.
motion, and we have the second, correct? So
Yeah.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve as
Second,
amended.
Second.
as amended.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 18-0-16 is approved as amended. Now. 18-0-0, geez, hold on. Let me restate that. Ordinance number 18-0-008 has been approved as amended.
Your bike's ready.
Mr. President,
Yes.
or move, I guess they don't want to see it.
What's that?
I guess they don't like it.
No, that's all right.
Richard, going forward,
Yeah.
would it be cleaner and easier just to have a whole new ordinance if we ever have this happen again? So whatever ordinance we were on, it's just as 008, so if we were on 17, you know, so then we just have a new plan come up, and that way, if you were to vote down the old plan, notice I'm not calling Plan A and B. You see what I'm saying? Because you create a lot of confusion in people that I've been talking to in the last couple months that kind of come up to you about this stuff.
Right. Well, you know, frankly, when we started on this venture, I wasn't quite sure how it would look when it came back, but it actually came back a lot more manageable than what I first thought, because the way I saw this was, you have this Plan B, and if someone would have moved to amend to put in the Plan B, and let's say that failed, okay, didn't get a second, or didn't get a majority vote, then Plan B would be gone, and you'd still have Plan A to go back to, because you didn't get rid of the legislation. If you would have gone right to Plan A, that would have been a lot more difficult. You wouldn't have known about Plan B. So could we write up something? Sure. But it might not be needed for another 30 years. Yeah, because this is the only time I've seen this happen.
Well, right, too, that's what I'm trying to say, so we don't make the same, I don't know if it's considered a mistake, but just to be clear going forward, so it's more etched in stone. Of course, we already changed our charter.
Well, I hope
anyway.
I'm here in 30 years if we have a problem.
Oh, boy.
Okay, ordinance number 18-0-026. Julie? Well, I guess I should ask Mr. Filippi, administration, you still wish to have this remain tabled?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Main table.
Ordinance number 18-0-026 will remain tabled. New legislation. Ordinance number 18-0-027.
An ordinance to authorize advances of funds and revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Mrs. Lingfelder, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak, members of council. What you have in front of you is a very standard piece of legislation from the Finance Department. We have a couple of temporary cash advances and a couple of appropriation revisions. Most of the appropriation revisions do have an offsetting decrease to the general fund contingency.
Thank you.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 18-0-027 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-028.
An ordinance amending Part 1, Title 9, Chapter 191 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Mentor, 2006, as amended, the same related to income tax effective January 1, 2016, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Henning.
I can take this real quick.
Can you?
Yeah,
Quick?
if you don't mind. Yeah, I'll.
He said quick.
Yeah, okay. You're going to get quick. The Regional Income Tax Authority has recommended that we enact this legislation relative to requirements to meet with the state law on the throwback rule and net profit tax returns, and that's all this does. Now, I just want everyone to know that those two provisions are the subject of ongoing litigation under a home rule challenge by any number of municipalities, and the hope from the city side is that the lawsuits will be successful and these two provisions will become irrelevant and we can eliminate them. But for now, we have to have them. That's it.
Second.
President? May I
Mr.
just make one
Flippia.
comment?
Oh, boy.
Yes, I know the night has been long, but I want you to understand that, because I know that we enter into this legislation somewhat reluctantly and forcibly, really, through House Bill 49, which requires all municipalities to adopt these changes, but understand that that throwback provision as it impacts the calculation of net profits for sales of tangible property within the community impacts us to the detriment of about $750,000 a year as a what appeared to be a very simple change by the House, the Ohio legislature has a very huge financial impact on us as calculated by Rita. So, you know, our reluctance is well known, but you know, so we support the appeal that's in process right now with all those communities that have so far lost the court battle on this. But it's a real impact to us.
Yeah, we had a motion and a second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 18-0-028 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-029.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with PennCare, Inc. for the purpose of 2018 International Bronze Super Chief XL ambulance and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief Searles, please.
Thank you, Mr. Flitback. Mr. President, members of council, the 2018 budget was approved with funding for a new rescue squad, and we have a need to replace the 2003 ambulance. We again put a committee together comprised of fire officers and our mechanic to research which squads were best for the community's needs. We looked at several manufacturers, and we unanimously selected Braun. That decision was based on quality of the build, cost, safety, patient comfort, longevity, and reliability. And as you know, we have a fleet of Braun ambulances. They have served us well. As the staff report indicates, a rescue squad manufactured by Braun Industries of Van Wert, Ohio, that meets our requirements is again available through the state cooperative bid program. The total cost through the program is $285,796. Fire levy funds will be used for this purchase, and it's our recommendation that the city manager be authorized to enter into a contract with PennCare Incorporated of Niles, Ohio, for the purchase of this squad. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
So wanted to say no if you were still looking down, but he looked back up. Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Ordinance number 18-0-029 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-030.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with American Fireworks to provide fireworks displays on or about July 4th, 2018, and during the 2018 City Fest events, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. A man that always likes to come in with a bang, Mr. Kaminsky.
Flippia, members of council. 3 bid proposals were received for 2 fireworks displays for the Parks and Recreation Department. The 2 shows are July 4th fireworks display for $25,000 and the City Fest display in the amount of $3,500. Based upon the review, American Fireworks submitted the best proposal for both shows based on the number of shells and on the size of the shells. The proposals also included their $10 million in liability insurance. It is therefore recommended that a contract be awarded to American Fireworks in the amount of $25,000 for the July 4th show and $3,500 for the City Fest show. Thank you.
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie?
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 18-0-030 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-031.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a software and service agreement with Civic Plus, Inc., DBA Civic Plus, for services and software, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Kaminsky, please.
Thank you, Mr. Flipiak, members of council. An evaluation of 4 software systems were completed by the Parks and Recreation Department and the IT Department. After evaluations and demonstration, it is recommended to proceed with the purchase of software, hardware, and training with Civic Plus, Inc. for $62,000. Civic Plus is a cloud-based software that covers not only basics such as program registration, facility management, reporting, point of sale, league management, membership, and financial management. The software's ease of scheduling, rescheduling time slot makes it easy for use by our ICE arena, which has been an ongoing challenge in our software systems. The Parks and Recreation Department's current system, ActiveNet, is going out of business at the end of 2018. Thank you.
Council?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 18-0-031 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-032.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an economic development grant with Quadrell labeling systems and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Traub, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak, members of council. You have a brief staff report that outlines Quadrell labeling systems history in the city and their proposal for, in addition to their existing building of approximately 7,600 square feet. Important from council's consideration is the creation, the commitment of 15 new jobs, which would bring in a payroll of about $750,000. I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to bring you anything for show and tell this evening. I went through their factory this afternoon, and their machines are quite large and couldn't be accommodated. But they are a manufacturer of labeling machines that are used for just a variety of applications, and I've indicated those to you in the staff report. Again, based on our criteria, they would qualify for a one-time $10,000 grant, if there are any questions. Thank you.
Move to suspend.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig? Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Move to approve.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Ordinance number 18-0-032 has been approved. We have an addendum to the agenda this evening. Resolution number 18-R-106.
A resolution authorizing the law director to submit a response letter to the legal counsel representing the Shamrock Business Center LTD regarding Diamond Center Drive and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Henning.
Well, last time we did this, somebody moved to pass it right away without having me say anything, so if you want to do that again.
Counsel, what's your pleasure?
Yeah, move to suspend.
Move to
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second?
Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Resolution number 18-R-106 has been adopted. Second reading, we have none. Third reading, we have none. Our favorite part, manager's report. Mr. Flippia.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, members of the council. And I'd like to introduce you to someone. Is Nita still here? She's there. Okay. I'd like to introduce to council our, one of the newer members of our administrative staff, Anita Justice, who is our new recreation superintendent. Nita, if you could stand up, please, and allow council to.
Hi, Anita.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
So Nita has been
Nice to see you
busy
again.
for several weeks now, and she's predominantly in charge of a lot of our programming activities, and great addition to our community. We're glad to have her. In other news, the city's annual yard waste collection program will begin the week of April 2nd and run through the second full week of December. Details can be found on the city's website or by contacting the Department of Public Works. Aqua Ohio is moving forward on their water line project on Low Ridge Lane. That began on That work began on March 16th. Low Ridge will have approximately 2,120 feet of 8-inch water line and 3 hydrants installed from Perkins to Johnny Cake Road, and then about another 1,500 feet of water line will be replaced on Perkins Drive as well. On March 15th, letters were sent out via regular mail to 55 local tree contractors, informing them that as of January 1st, they are now required to be registered contractors to perform work within the city. This is in accordance to the changes that council made to Chapter 1311, and I think the question was asked at our last meeting, how many have actually registered, and I believe the number at that time was 8 or 9. So we're trying to be proactive here, just remind them before they start
President?
doing work.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Could you also mention when you get that out there that their signs are not permitted in the right-of-way? I mean, Zion's got signs all over the city still in the right-of-way from last year. You know, they're just an eyesore.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's a good point, and I think it's a good opportunity to
Thank you.
remind them. Our deer culling season has come to an end. This year, the city took 42 deer of the 60 tags that were allocated. Huffman Equipment and Rental plans to start dredging the Menor Channel on or about April 1st, and the required completion date this year is April 15th. There are still in recreation, there are still spots available for the adult flashlight dash egg hunt on Saturday, March 24th. You can call the Recreation Department or visit the city's website to register. Also, the spring ice painting and Easter egg hunt on ice event will take place on Saturday, March 24th as well, from 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. at the ice arena. Cost for that is $5, and it will be followed by a free open skate to the public. We will have one additional unveiled art reception that will open right here at Menor City Hall on Friday, April 6th. That will be from 7 to 8:30 p.m., again in the Menor City Hall lobby. And this event will feature the art of Dustin Kaiser. This will be on display for a 3-week exhibit, and that's also free and open to the public. The Skate Dance Dream Ice Show will take place on Saturday, April 7th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. This ice show will feature professional skaters, dancers, and several local skaters, and will also feature Olympian Kimmy Meissner and Haley Payne from So You Think You Can Dance. So this is a ticketed event, and you can get those tickets at skatedancedream.com. And then finally, we have two new businesses that we'd like to welcome to the community. MGP Global Trading, LLC, at 7630 Tyler Boulevard, and Twice Love Shop at 8806 Menor Avenue, and we wish them great success in our community. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Clears correspondence. Julie?
Council is in receipt of liquor permits for Winking Lizard of Mentor, Inc., DBA Winking Lizard Tavern and Patio, and Round One Entertainment, Inc., DBA Round One Bowling and Amusement. Council is also in receipt of Mentor Municipal Court month-end report for February of 2018.
Commission committee reports. We have meeting minutes, Board of Building and Zoning Appeals for February 13th, 2018. Any old business?
Mr. President?
Mr. Blake?
I was wondering if we could get an update reminder on what residents can expect to see happening at Springbrook this year. I've been getting a few calls of a few people kind of needed to be reminded on what the plan is there, which the plan hasn't changed, but people are perceiving with the trucks coming and going that something different might be happening. So I was wondering if we could just get that update reminder.
Sure. Mr. Kaminsky's prepared to offer that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Yeah, as you indicated, Mr. Blake, the plans really haven't changed. They're probably 98% accurate to what we did when we met over at the senior center last year. Very, very little adjustments. The work that you see right now is all the dirt that is coming over from the Two-Town project. They've transported approximately 20,000 cubic yards of dirt so far, which is slightly under half the dirt that's going to be coming over anyhow. And with this nicer weather, obviously, you're going to see a lot more work that is happening out there. It's hindered us for a little bit. This phase of the project that you're going to see this year is pretty much everything from ground level and down. It's going to be the ground work, the reshaping of the ponds, the walking trails, installing the utilities, the parking lots, driveways, the prairie lands. It's going to start taking shape more as we get more of the materials from the other side of the city. With that work that's happening, the next big project that you're going to see, it's probably going to happen around June-ish, is the installation of the culverts that is going to go in. And when that gets put in, that's when the roads are going to get put in, the asphalt path is going to get put in, and all the parking areas are going to be put in at that point. Completion for this project is actually September 29th, 2018. We get questions as well, how soon are we going to be able to use this? What we keep saying is right now the completion date's September 29th, and we're going to keep everybody informed of what's going on and the progress that is happening.
Good. Just one follow-up, Ken. Should we have like a coming soon board sign out there, maybe has these plans on them, so people, when they're out driving, they want to stop in and take a look at the
Well, right now, you can just follow the mud path. Right? We can.
Thanks for taking all my dirt, Sean.
It's a very good suggestion. We hadn't considered that, but, because the plan is pretty predominantly represented on our website, and I know that on our social media accounts, we've put some pieces out there. But we certainly can, and, reasonable representation of the final product could also be placed on there.
I think that would be very helpful.
Mr. Filipiak, why don't we have an official groundbreaking?
Dedication.
Well, you won't be able to get in really until the infrastructure's in place. So that's going to be we can have a groundbreaking anytime we choose, but to actually get people in there, you're going to need the culverts in place.
And it's 72, yeah.
Yeah. No, not till later spring at least.
Hey, positive publicity, we'll take it.
Yeah.
New business? Persons?
Mr. President, I had a conversation with Mr. Blake last week, and he brought up a few good points. I'd like to have a work session where we talk about the planning process. We don't have anything formally in writing. Maybe we do need something in writing in terms of how things start and how things move forward. Also, part B of that is basically what transpired here, this evening. I mean, this was, as Richard said, something that we haven't gone through in his 30 years of being a part of council or as law director, because if it happened once, it quite possibly happen again. So maybe we should take a look in putting things more formally down in paper so that we don't have any future problems for not only this council, but future councils.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I had a question, a follow-up. Ken, on that Springbrook Garden, that's well over, a $2 million investment by the city, is that correct?
You're correct, and the original purchase was just about $2.5 million. At the end of the day, through Phase 2, and Phase 2 will be bid out before the end of the year, you'll have over $7 million invested in that
And
park.
did we request from the state budget appropriations from our representatives some funding for that?
We did.
Was it handicapped or something?
We did. We put together an application to be included, or request to be included on the state's capital budget of $250,000 to help pay for handicapped accessible walking paths, as we're placing, a lot of parks, metro parks and others will in our own preserve will predominantly use gravel paths, but that isn't particularly conducive to those who are ambulatory disabled. So ours will be hard surface. We'll also be providing a fishing pier off of the enhanced pond to be able to accommodate those who are wheelchair bound. So that obviously adds greatly to the expense of the project, and we did receive support on that application from several agencies in the area, veterans agencies, the Area Office on Aging, Developmental Disabilities Board. We were unsuccessful in receiving any funding.
Do you remember how much funding the district got from the state budget appropriations? I know that millions.
Well, I know Lakeland College got $4.4 million on its
Right.
own. There were some other projects funded in Lake County. That was the largest portion, certainly in excess of $5 million.
So the largest city in the district, represented by 4 different representatives, didn't find a dime for the city of Mentor? Is that what you're saying?
I sadly have to say that is correct, sir.
So I hope everyone in the city of Mentor who's out there watching this, when these guys come knocking on your door and they want you to elect them, ask them why your tax dollars that go down to the state weren't appropriated evenly, or even a pittance that we asked for. For the second time in 3 years, we got shut out for requests that we asked. And the other requests that we finally got, we had to do a full court press, where you personally had to go meet with the Speaker of the House in Columbus. So, I just think it's time that, the residents start to understand what's going on. And I hate to say it, but I think this is all something that has a lot to do with redistricting, where people are getting elected because they're in a predominantly Democrat or Republican zone, and they don't feel they're responsible, especially to the city of Mentor, who's the largest tax-paying community in this district. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I echo Mr. Kirschner's comments. I had a lunch meeting with State Rep John Rogers last Friday. And even though he's not our personal representative, he did show me everything. Well, you're not the whole thing, but you guys.
It's redistricting, right? You're all over.
He did show me everything that he put in for. And even he was a little bit surprised, let's say, that there are other cities, especially to the west, that not only did they receive what they put in for, but they received over double what they put in for certain projects. So it is amazing how we've tried to be the leader of our county in terms of economic development, in terms of helping people out, and we all get along. But it would be nice, like you said, that if our dollars that are going down would come back at least in a small percentage would be nice.
And this year, we're going to have an opportunity because one of those representatives termed out, and he's decided he wants to be our county commissioner. So when this guy comes knocking on your door, Ron Young, you might want to ask him, you know, we didn't get any money at the state. Are you going to take care of the largest city in Lake County when you become a county commissioner, should you become a county commissioner? So,
Kirchner, politics.
well, it's getting ridiculous. It's not politics.
You can
it's,
talk about the money, you can't talk about.
Well, I don't know why.
Mr. President?
Ms.
I
Dowling.
have a question of the administration. Not to beat a dead horse, but just to let people know, do we have a ballpark idea just in sales tax what the city of Mentor contributes to the state every year?
I think about, it exceeds 40% of the total in Lake County. I remember reporting on that a year or so ago, and I think that number was around 43% of the total. So it's significant. You know, when you look at, you know, we have $4.2 or $3 billion tax, property tax value, which translates into over $1 billion in actual taxable value. You know, it dwarfs any other community in Lake County, and I think to both Councilman Martin's point and Councilman Kirchner's point, and I think I've heard it echoed by everyone on this council. You know, while we certainly have great respect, and it's not about merit of the projects that did get funded. I mean, we certainly have a great deal of certainly happy that Lakeland College was funded because it's a benefit to us and the other communities that were fortunate enough to get funding. It's really just a fair share issue. I mean, to Councilman Kirchner's point, we send as a community, we send a larger portion of tax revenues to Columbus, and you know, we're not looking for a disproportionate share, just a fair share.
So basically, it's safe to say that we're not getting a very good return on our investment.
We'd like to do better.
Better than zero?
Well, there's only one place to go, and that's up.
It's not better than zero, that's the problem.
Okay. All right, we have persons before council. Clarice Varga. State your name and address, please. I want to remind you that you have 4 minutes to speak.
The opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm Clarice Varga.
And I live at 37931 West Spalding Street in Willoughby. And I'd like to talk tonight about a situation that deals with the Wildwood Singers of Mentor. I've been a member of the Wildwood Singers over the last 30 years. It dates back to 1988. It was started by Dorothy Vogelin with the support of Len Zito. And it was brought to Mentor through the Cultural Center to bring choral singing to the community. Over the years, this group has provided countless musical presentations to our community and has become a musical tradition. And I would like to thank all of you for funding the program over those last 30 years. We have a very loyal group of followers who attend our concerts. And they are quite upset about the recent cut to our program. The decision to slash our director's pay by 50% was handed down abruptly and without discussion or warning to our group. We all feel this was a very unfair action. We understand that no one wanted the group to stop singing, but we lost our director, our weekly rehearsals have stopped, and our spring program will be canceled, although it has been advertised as a result. According to the Recreation Department's mission, as it's posted on the website, the City of Mentor is committed to enhancing the quality of life for Mentor residents. A wide variety of recreational and cultural activities are provided to all ages, to residents of all ages. This commitment to the people of Menor needs to be honored, and it needs to be honored by allocating enough funds to the program that carries out that mission. And although we're not the only program, the Wildwood Singers is one of those cultural programs that brings a lot of culture to our community, not only to the audiences, but to the people who are participating. So I would just like to ask you to please consider taking some steps as you can to reverse the actions that have taken place that cause these cuts to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's the only person we have. And Rebecca Richardson. Is that it?
Good evening, everyone.
You state your name and address, please.
I'm Rebecca Richardson. I live at 7102 Brandywine Drive in Menor. And before I start, I'd like to use a little storytelling technique with you. When I say the word ho, your proper response is hey. That ensures that you're listening and I don't fall asleep. Councilman, good evening. I live in Menor, Ward 1, near the Wildwood Cultural Center. I have never been as upset as I am now about how the city has handled the funding of the Wildwood Cultural Center and the Community Arts Commission and its devastating effects that were felt by the Wildwood Singers. The Wildwood Cultural Center and the Arts Commission both need more funding to maintain our program. Our director's salary was cut by over 50%, reducing him to earning less than he had when he started with the Wildwood Singers 10 years ago. The Wildwood Singers have a 30-year history in Menor. We are made up of 15 to 20 people who like to sing and can carry a tune. Our group includes all ages. We sing 4-part harmony. And we learn about 15 pieces of music per concert. We present 2 major concerts of the year at the Menor Senior Center. Our main goal, as explained to us by both Wildwood directors, is to put music in the community. Our culture is expressed through vocal music. We also visit the local nursing homes. Our group was not started to bring in money, but whatever we earn goes to the city of Menor and the Wildwood Cultural Center. Our spring concert has consistently brought in more money each year from the audience of 150 to 175 people. We have filled the senior center. The audience even sits on the chairs out in the lobby. We have a following that comes to every concert. Our holiday concerts have been traditionally free. Our winter programs are always closed with the words, "Happy Holidays from the City of Menor." Ho.
Hey.
Thank you. And what are the benefits of music? Why are people drawn to music? Music helps us through emotional times. Music distracts people from pain. Music brings back memories. It can calm people and it can make them tap their toes. Music changes people's moods. While singing at the nursing homes, we often see patients' demeanors change. We had an Alzheimer's patient who was brought in on a stretcher to hear us sing. Before we knew it, he started singing the bass part. He had been a choir member in his church. His aide burst into tears because she had never heard him speak before. We made a difference. Some people doze off before we start our program, but as we begin to sing, they wake up, they clap, they sing, they smile. We have brought them joy. There is one patient in a power wheelchair who watches for our arrival at the front door and greets us with a big smile.
Rebecca, you're going to have to start wrapping it up.
There is no doubt that he enjoys our being there. Ho!
Hey,
But now there is a new budget and there is no funding for our director to play the keyboard at the nursing homes. We can't do without him. 10 years ago, I joined the Wildwood Singers and I needed something positive in my life. I found a dedicated group of people, exceptionally talented musical director, and new friends, and stayed in the group. I'm going to ask for a couple more minutes. Under Mr. Debick's leadership, the group blossomed. He brought out the best in everybody. He spent many extra hours making home practice CDs, writing custom arrangements, purchasing sheet music, and coaching soloists. We took pride in our programs and thank you for backing him and us for the last 10 years. He built our choral group to become better musicians. He found the good in what he did and helped us improve. He was here. If he was here, we would continue to grow. Ho!
hey.
After working 2 months on our spring concert preparation, we suddenly learned that the Community Arts Commission had cut his pay by over 50%. The Arts Commission loved what he was doing, but they could not afford to pay him. With this cut, he would be earning less than he earned when he started. Mr. Debick's a professional musician. He needs the funding that he was expecting. He felt that the drastic cut showed disrespect for his years of experience and longevity with the group, so he moved on. The average earnings for a community choral director are at least $25 to $35 per hour. Mr. Debick's pay was within that average range, and he is an exceptional musician. All the Wildwood Singers were and are totally devastated. The decision was so abrupt that there was no time to come up with any solution to keep our director. The timing was terrible. If there's going to be a cutback, why not put it at the end of the concert season? Cutting funding midway through the season was disrespectful to those who had already donated many hours toward upcoming concerts and disappointing to the audiences that were looking forward to hearing us sing. There is nothing the Wildwood Singers would rather do than continue singing. Our director needs to be paid a reasonable preparation time and paid for making of our home practice CDs. He needs to be paid for the directing of us and the programs at the nursing homes. We need continued weekly rehearsals. Finding a new director will take time and energy. We want to be an active singing group again. We would like the Wildwood Singers
Beck,
to...
I'm sorry, but you're at twice the time we allocate for this.
So in closing, council members and Wildwood Singers need further funding to attract and keep an experienced and proficient choral director who plays piano. Some groups use both, a paid director as well as a paid pianist. I value my time and health, and once we find a director, I don't want to go through this drama, heartbreak, and stress again. I ask you that you make some additional funding available so we can retain this director and keep the Wildwood Singers singing for many years to come. Thank you for your consideration. The Wildwood Singers are counting on you to help us keep growing and sharing music in the community.
Thank you, Rebecca. Tim DeWolf.
Good evening. I'll be less than 4 minutes. I first came before you. My name's Tim DeWolf. I live on Sherwood Drive. I've been there for 30 years. The neighborhood's 50 years old. I first came before you about a drainage problem, failing to maintain the inlet waters to the retention basin behind Hopkins School. I worked with my councilman, Sean Blake, on that. There was a project, and it was successful in reducing water coming out of the, around the egress into the retention basin. At that time, I met with city engineers on site, and since then I've written at least 2 letters, of which have been hand-delivered to the administration offices, asking who owns and who is to maintain the catch basin and stormwater drainage that runs across my property and my neighbor's property and empties into what the city engineer described as a naturally flowing waterway. The city has no rights to maintain that. They don't have an easement. The neighborhood's 50 years old. Originally, everybody had septic systems. At some point, wastewater systems were put in, and they run down the street. Catch basins are at the corner, the southwest corner of Sherwood Circle, and at the base of Sherwood and Creekwood, and then at Creekwood and Hopkins. When they put the wastewater line in, they should have at that time run the stormwater line down the street the same way that the sewer line goes. Right now, there's no maintenance of where the water comes out of that collection point at the back of 7452 Sherwood. It creates a breeding ground for mosquitoes. The neighborhood has grown, and they use that as a dumping area. I'm asking the city to answer my letters, and if you have already and I missed it, I apologize. Who owns it? Who maintains it? And I even copied the law director on the request, because one of the city engineers said that he forwarded this over a year ago to the law department about who would manage that system, since it probably was established when it was a village. That's all I have to say. I would just like an answer. If I've missed it, I'm sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. DeWolf. Nobody else before council? Move to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. No, that's what Tony was talking about earlier today. I mean, because Ken was saying that he wasn't going to be able to.
Thank you.
Explain this to me.
You don't believe me.